Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle, featuring your hosts, the writer, Chris Pike, and the scoring machine, Shawn Redhage. Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to another off-season episode here of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. And as we keep saying, Shawn, it might be the NBL off-season, but there's an incredible amount of things for us to talk about. It's only been a couple of weeks since we have come together here, but the news has really racked up, and there's hot news that's hot off the wire right now as we record this. It's just been announced this morning as we're recording. The NBL's all-time greatest coach is now coming back to the league, and he's coming back to a club that we thought might not even be existing in the short term, but all of a sudden they've now got an incredible coach at the helm. There's been all sorts of player movements with retirements and players opting out of their contracts with clubs who we thought were locked in. We don't know what the future holds for Andrew Bogut. We don't know what the future holds for a lot of people, and the official free agency market opens up in just over a week's time as well. So things are really ramping up, Shawn, and we're still potentially 6 months away from the season starting. So let's get straight into it. I'm Chris Pike, but the man you've all tuned in to listen to and get his thoughts from, the scoring machine, Shawn Redhage. How do I find you once more?
Yeah, Pike, getting busier and busier. It seems like things are getting somewhat back to normal here in WA. Obviously, the restrictions even eased. Be able to have parents at the youth basketball games, and pretty soon 30,000 people at Optus Stadium. So we're getting closer to normality, which is great to see.
Yeah, and within 3 weeks we would have been able to have a full RAC arena for NBL games as well. So we're ready to go for the NBL season out in the West. I don't know what's happening in Victoria, but certainly in Perth we're ready to go for whenever the NBL says tip off.
Well, could they have an NBL hub over here in WA? I don't know. They're talking about that with the AFL. I think by the time the NBL season gets around, they will, I think Victoria will have things under control, hopefully, and we can have somewhat of a normal season, if you can call it like that.
Yeah, let's hope so. Now, also on this show, one thing I forgot to mention in the introduction, I have caught up with Alex Pledger, 4-time championship winner at the New Zealand Breakers, most recently played at Melbourne United. He's one man that's now free on the free agency market, so he's waiting to see where he will find a home for this upcoming season. For mine, he's still got plenty left to offer, so I'd be amazed if we don't see him playing in the NBL again this upcoming season. What springs to mind when you think of the Big Chief?
I think he was just such a great player in that he knew his role. And, he's one of the better offensive rebounders we had in our league, and so big and strong that when he got himself down in the right position, which he usually was, it was pretty tough to move him. And he was pretty handy and probably one of those underrated players in the success of that New Zealand Breakers team. He came in through that system. And I thought, really developed under the Breakers system and made himself into a really good NBL player.
Absolutely. And like I said, still got plenty left in the tank as well. So we'll speak to him later on this show. So hopefully everyone's looking forward to tuning into that to hear about him reflecting on his career, and also to hear him talk about how much he feels he's got left and what his future holds. Now, before we get to some NBL news, Shawn, Redhage basketball pretty much back to business as usual now that our restrictions here in Western Australia are pretty much lifted. Things must be getting pretty busy on your end.
Yeah, it's good to get back out on the basketball court, and we've got most of our schools back and camps running. They're in July school holidays, so those are looking like they're going to be completely full as well. So it's just great to see kids back and just a smile on their face to see them running around. Sometimes you don't know how much you love sport until it's kind of taken away for a few months, and we're seeing a lot of smiles and basketballs bouncing, which is fun.
Absolutely. Is that something you have noticed a lot? How have the kids that you've coached, how have they come back to basketball? Are they just so excited after 3 or 4 months of having it taken away from them? Are they just chomping at the bit to get back out there?
They are, as soon as they come through the school gates or through the basketball stadium doors, they're running onto the court, and you kind of feel like finally the shackles have been taken off and they're allowed to play sport and be a kid as you should at that age. So it's been fun to see and interesting as well, just to see how much kids are enjoying it, and hopefully it can stay like this.
Yeah, let's hope so. Now, let's move on to the NBL news because we've got a lot to run through, Shawn. Let's start with the hottest and most recent news. Brian Goorjian, 6-time championship winning coach in the NBL, 6-time coach of the year. He's coached 735 games in the league. He's spent the last decade over in China, where he's continued to build his career legacy. But he's now back to the league and back at the Hawks. It's an amazing turn of events. How surprised were you when you heard the news confirmed?
Well, the interesting thing is Brian Goorjian's been rumored to a lot of jobs over the years. I've heard from people, oh, it's a sure thing, and then they go and hire someone else. So when I heard that initial, I was a bit skeptical, probably also because, Illawarra Hawks, obviously getting new ownership. Goorjian, he's coming back to win a championship. He's not coming back just to make up the numbers and what he's been able to achieve. It's a great get for the Illawarra Hawks. I think that, probably Goorjian, his record speaks for himself. So I think it will make them instantly a contender. And now the challenge for him is going to be, can he get the horses and the players to be able to achieve what we know that he's accustomed to. But, credit to the Illawarra Hawks. They've set themselves up, I think, nicely with Goorjian. He's, I think quite possibly the greatest coach we've seen in the NBL. And it'll be interesting, him and his championships going up against Trevor Gleeson and his championships and some of the great coaches we have in the NBL. It's great to see him back in the league.
That was one of my questions I wanted to put to you. How much of a factor do you think it is that Trevor Gleeson's now catching him? He's on 5 championships. Brian's on 6. Do you reckon that plays any factor? Did he want to make sure that Trev didn't get any closer?
I hadn't really thought about it until you brought that up, but possibly. I think Trevor, five championships is coming in. You got to put him in that equation now as greatest coach we've seen in the NBL with the success he's had. So it'll be I'm looking forward to watching those two go at it. Two great coaches. I've I had the fortunate chance to play under Goorjian at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and nothing but a lot of respect for him and the way he goes about it. And I really enjoyed playing for him and with Trevor Gleeson as well. So I know them quite well, and I think it's going to be great for the league to kind of have some of those battles within the coaching realm as well.
Yeah, I wanted to drill down on your history with Brian Goorjian a little bit. Obviously, he picked you to go to the Olympics, and going to Beijing is one of your undoubted career and life highlights, as it should be. So you owe him for that forever. So I'm sure that naturally means you have some fond memories of him. But you had some great battles against the teams that he coached as well, especially probably that 2007-2008 Sydney Kings team that you met in the semi-finals, and obviously a year later you played against his South Dragons teams as well. Two things. What was he like to play under when you were playing for the Boomers at the Olympics, and what made him such an incredible coach to play against?
Look, I always felt like his teams weren't going to beat themselves. If you were going to beat them, you had to play extremely well. They knew the scouting system, and they were so well drilled in their system as well. They kind of, they knew all the wrinkles, and you just couldn't. If you kind of played something wrong, they were going to find out. And then I think the other thing is his guys just always played extremely hard. You knew it was going to be a battle every time you played them. I think when you're in the national team environment, probably you coach a little bit different than you do on a day-to-day NBL. But the thing that I respected about Goorjian was, just so personable and, coming grabbing you after a training saying, hey, this is what I saw you did well. This is, even I know there was times at the Olympics where, I probably was 12th man on the bench, but he would come up and grab me, hey, be ready next game. And just little things like that would go a long way. He just kind of felt like he had that belief in you. And as long as you went out there and played as hard as you could and played within a system, that he would reward you, and success has followed him everywhere he's gone.
I think 12th man on the bench of an Olympics team is still a dream come true for everybody. So I would still be happy with that. So hopefully you are happy with that as well, Shawn. Hopefully that didn't take away from how proud you were.
No complaining at all. I was just excited to be a part of the team and whatever they needed. I think when you get to that level, you throw your ego out the window, and you're just you're trying to compete for your country and trying to do the best you can and play your role. So I think it was a special moment in my career for sure.
You mentioned it before, but if you were a free agent player right now and you probably hadn't seriously considered going to the Hawks because of all of the upheaval that you'd heard about, all of a sudden with Brian Goorjian as their coach, do they become a hot property for potential free agents to want to go and play for?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's I think instantly gives them credibility, and I think that he is also a really good recruiter. Got Glenn Saville to leave Illawarra to go to Sydney, so it will be I think and the thing I think that's probably good about it as well, he's always kind of kept his eye on the NBL from what I know. Even when I got injured in 2011, he was over in China. He reached out and just kind of connected with me. So I know that he's still involved and keeps his eye out on the NBL. He's got a long affiliation with it, so he'll know the guys he wants to go after. And and the other thing, I think it's important timing wise because it's before the other free agency comes. I'm sure he's talking to every agent out there, seeing who's available, what's going on. So be a number of guys. I'd imagine Cam Glidden would be one of the guys that might be tops on his list.
Yeah, I do want to talk to you about Cam in a little while, but I want to stick with the Hawks for now. Now, last time we spoke about them, we didn't know what their future held, and we were hoping that they could get a good, ownership syndicate in place to help them build their future, and it looks like they've done that. So, former Sydney Kings owner Dory Cordell is the man leading the syndicate, with help of a man that is well known to, obviously, basketball fans worldwide for his NBA work, Brian Colangelo, and also an American businessman, Michael Proctor, are the men leading this syndicate to take over the Hawks. And we'll have to get used to that because no longer are they the Illawarra Hawks, but they are just known as the Hawks, and they want to, they want to make Canberra their own, they want to make Newcastle their own, they want to make Illawarra their own to try to, expand their horizons. Firstly, on the ownership, do you think this syndicate seems like it's the right fit?
Look, I think there was quite a bit of interest. I think the NBL would have done their due diligence on the different ownership group that were coming in. But obviously with Colangelo and his ability to probably attract a lot of interest from the USA and also his experience at the NBA, I think it gives that the Hawks ownership group and team a lot of backing right there and professionalism. So I think it's great. We're seeing that trend in the NBL now where you're getting a lot of American businessmen or ex-NBA players that want to be involved and probably don't have $1 billion by an NBA team. So they're coming over here and seeing how great the league is. I think it's a sign of where the NBL is at and how far we've come over the last few years.
Now, their decision to expand outside of not just being based in Wollongong, to me, it's an interesting one. The first point is that it sends a real scare into, the Illawarra community that no longer can they take this team for granted. So we've talked about on this show before how their crowd numbers just aren't simply good enough to keep the team there in the way that they have been turning out. So to me, this shows that if they don't turn out, in this coming season, they might lose this team altogether from playing games in Wollongong. And the second point is, if you're Canberra or Newcastle, can you fully embrace a team that you still see as being a team from Wollongong? If you have a look at the rugby league rivalries and you have a look at the Canberra Raiders, the Dragons, and then the Newcastle Knights, they're really strong rivals. So it's hard to imagine, the cities of Canberra, Newcastle, and Wollongong all feeling like they can share one team. How do you feel it all comes together?
I've never been a huge fan of that taking, even the Perth Wildcats, when I first got here, we used to go play a game or two up in Darwin and just knowing the ins and outs of the cost and all that stuff. They never really made a whole lot of money out of that, and there wasn't that, it was great bringing NBL basketball to Darwin, and we got some decent crowds there, but it just seemed like it was a big effort, and I'm not sure the reward was there. And I also think, you want to have some pride, this is our team, this is our town.
Yeah, sure.
I kind of feel like you're taking that a little bit out of there, and maybe this is a look at maybe moving the team down the track.
Yep.
I don't know. I hope that's not the case. I think, the fact that they're a founding club and been in the NBL since it started, I'd hope they find a way to keep them in Illawarra. But that we'll see how that plays out. But from the outside, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't like taking games to other cities.
Yeah.
I just think, well, let's play in our one town. Maybe you can take a random game here and there, but if you're going to say take 3 games to Canberra, 3 games to Newcastle, we'll see. We'll see how, I think that they've got some ideas. They're going to try some new things, which is good, but I haven't seen it work yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think by basing yourself out of 3 different cities, I think it means that none of the 3 cities actually feel like it's their team. But in the longer term, I think it might be a trial to see which of the 3 cities they end up basing themselves in the long term. So whoever supports them the best in the next season or 2, they might end up becoming the Canberra Hawks, the Newcastle Hawks, or go back to being the Illawarra Hawks, depending on which of the 3 cities supports them the best. So it might be really important for, if you want an NBL club in one of those 3 cities, this is the time to come out and support them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I played the Sydney Kings in Canberra. Didn't get a great crowd there. I played against the Newcastle when I first came into the league. The crowds weren't great then either. So I guess they're kind of all in that same boat. So you might be right. Whoever gets out and supports them the best, it's kind of a pitch to secure a team for the following season, possibly.
Okay, let's move on up the freeway a little bit to Sydney. A lot's been happening at the Sydney Kings. Let's start with the news that I guess you are most familiar with. The retirement of Kevin Lisch caught some of us by surprise. I think he looked like he was just warming up by the end of this past NBL season. Had a terrific grand final series and after injury, but I guess the wear on his body over the last decade, the fact that he's got four kids at home, the unknown of I guess what's happening moving forward thanks to COVID-19 and everything meant that he felt the time was right. Did his decision to retire catch you by surprise a little bit?
Yeah, it did actually. I knew he had some injuries over the year and obviously didn't play a whole lot this last season, but the fact that he played in the grand final and looked like he was moving pretty well, and I thought still had at least another 2-3 years in him. I was coaching, came out and saw the news that he retired, and gave him a call straight away just to see how he was going, and he seemed okay with it. I think sometimes when you finally make that announcement and it's finalized, it can be a little bit tough. I think once the season starts back up, that'll be the toughest. But for him, it was just a physical thing. He just with his ankle and the surgery he had, it was going to be tough to come back. And I think probably long term, probably the smart move, but big loss for NBL basketball and the Sydney Kings. I think Kevin Lisch, we talked to Cam Glidden, said Kevin Lisch in his prime was one of the best players he's ever had to play against. So I think that's a sign of respect. I know for me, just a tremendous teammate. I'd take Kevin Lisch on my team any day. He'd be one of my first picks. So, it was just a lot of respect for him on the court, off the court, and the way he went about it. I think he can be, he can hit the pillow at night and be proud of what he's accomplished throughout his career. And he's done some incredible things, including 2 MVPs, championships, and just being an all-around great player.
Yeah, for sure. And let's hope that we can catch up with him in the coming weeks here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle too, because hearing you and Kev catch up for our show, I think would be terrific for our listeners. So we'll make sure we make that happen pretty soon. Now, sticking with the Sydney Kings, Andrew Bogut has also opted out of his deal with the Kings, and I guess we wait and see what his immediate future holds. To me, I think he sits out this upcoming NBL season, and then somewhere towards the middle of next year he starts to ramp up his preparations to get ready for the Olympics and potentially his swan song. That's to me what looks like the likely path for him. What do you think he'll do, and how big of a blow is it for the Kings to not have him to bank on?
Well, I mentioned I thought the Kings team this last year might have been the most talented team I've seen take an NBL court. Now they've lost Andrew Bogut, they've lost Kevin Lisch, Casper Ware's opted out, Xavier Cooks is gone. That's 4 their starting 5 has left. And all accounts, Andrew Bogut had actually put his house up for sale in Sydney as well. So I don't think it's likely he'll come back to the Sydney Kings, which I actually thought was interesting, considering it was, there was talk he was going to have ownership in the club, and I kind of thought if he was going to keep playing. So maybe he's thinking, he did say he's had some interest over in the NBA. Maybe he wants to give that one more crack and then try and play in the Olympics. I hope he does play in the Olympics, but it'll be, he does have a connection with Goorjian.
Absolutely
And
does.
Illawarra is not too far down the road. So could we see Andrew Bogut at the Illawarra Hawks? That would be an interesting one as well.
That would be massive. So let's keep our eye out on that. We might start to get some of this news within the next week or so once free agency opens. Now, speaking of free agents, Cam Glidden, we had a fascinating chat with him only a few weeks back, and he had just recommitted to the Brisbane Bullets, and he spoke to us about how much he was looking forward to the chance to, I guess, redeem himself for the way last season went, and he had been putting the work in, and he seemed really motivated, and all the pieces seemed in place there for him to be getting ready for a strong season at the Bullets. I don't know what's changed since, but all of a sudden he's now no longer signed to the Brisbane Bullets. He's a free agent, and I think you wouldn't be doing your due diligence if you're not every single other NBL club and considering signing him.
Yeah, I think, looking at the realm of what's happened in the NBL, and guys have kind of opted out of their contracts, and he's probably one of those guys where he probably wasn't playing the exact role he wanted with the Brisbane Bullets, and even to his admission, didn't have his greatest season last year, but still had a great impact. I think everyone knows what he's capable of. So I think for him to take a 50% pay cut to stay at a team where he's probably not playing the exact role that he wants to me, just from a business case point of view, and credit Bullets allowing him to exit out of that. I think he'll be one of the hottest free agents.
Yep.
I think there's definitely talk over West that they'd be happy to have him over here, being a WA boy from Bunbury. So we'll be interested to see
You've already offered him a job too, remember?
Yes, I did. He could be working for Redhage basketball as well. Mm-hmm. So, but we'll see how that all plays out. But I think every team would be connecting with him and seeing what he's looking for, because he's just one of those guys that plays both sides of the ball, can shoot three, obviously a boomer. So it's hard to get those guys on your team. So I think he'll be a hot commodity out there.
I also haven't had the chance to get your thoughts on Bryce Cotton recommitting to the Perth Wildcats as well. How huge was that? And the longer this goes on for, do you think the chance of Nick Kay re-signing as well gets better and better?
Yeah, I do think that obviously with Nick Kay not having signed anywhere else currently, I think that, it's looking more likely that he might stay here. And with the Bryce Cotton thing, I think that, to me, that's probably a sign, if you're a Wildcat fan, that I think this is where Bryce Cotton, hopefully his last stop as a player. That you've seen that with a number of guys that they've brought the Wildcats over. James Crawford and Ricky Grace, myself, come over here and find a home, So it's one of those things where, I think it's a great sign that probably, and for 3 years as well. So it's great for the league. I mean, Bryce Cotton is just a world-class player. So I think it's great that we're able to keep a talent like that.
What isn't great for the league is what's happening up in Cairns right now. So the Taipans organisation is doing nothing wrong. They've got their finances on track. They've done some really good things in recent years to get the club in a strong financial position and a stronger position to be a powerhouse in the league. On the court, we saw that they were able to put together a tremendous team last year that pushed the Perth Wildcats in the semi-finals. But all of a sudden, the Cairns City Council has decided that smack bang in the middle of this upcoming NBL season, they want to redevelop the Cairns Convention Centre, which has thrown things into chaos because there's no other venue in Cairns, obviously, that the Taipans can play in. It's really unknown right now what's going to happen. There's probably a chance that the Taipans can't compete this season. There's a chance that they might have to play their home games in Townsville, which would be obviously disruptive to Cairns. Or let's hope that common sense prevails and the Cairns City Council just delays the redevelopment until March, because what's the difference really between November and March on a building that doesn't really desperately need the work that's going to be done?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and you would have thought maybe even that time, if they were going to do it, why not do it during the coronavirus when you have nothing going on, and there's nothing going on currently. So go get some of that work, try and get it as much done now, so the Taipans could play. It's got to be frustrating for the Taipans to, and my guess is, and I don't know the all ins and outs of how it works up there, and as far as events and that type of thing. But my guess is the Taipans are their number one, client.
Yeah.
So you probably want to keep them happy and keep them around. Otherwise, you lose a significant source of revenue for an event center like that. So it's an interesting move. Let's hope common sense prevails. I think I've seen a lot of things going out there, people sawing to petition for it. So hopefully,
your old mate Alex Loudon's been leading that.
Yeah, no one better to lead that charge as well. Sure. Let's hope that everything works out there, because the Taipans, I think if they can bring back those guys, they're going to be a force to reckon with in the NBL for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this league needs that Cairns Taipans organisation and that team that they had in it. So let's hope that, like you said, common sense can prevail. Now, just one last one before we go to the first break and we go to our chat with Alex Pledger, Shawn. Bit of local news in Perth. Ryan Petrik being announced the head coach of the Perth Lynx. I think it's a terrific signing and a great show of faith that the coaching work done through the pathways of basketball in WA can lead to either a WNBL or an NBL head coaching job. I think it's a great sign that our pathways are working. Obviously, you've spent a little bit of time with him when he was helping out a little bit at the Perth Wildcats. You've coached against him this past year or played against his team, his Rockingham Flames team in the SBL. How pleased are you that a local got the job at the Perth Lynx?
Yeah, I think it's a great sign. And, you talk about basketball pathways, and I think there's some fantastic coaches here in WA. And, I think, he's familiar with the program as well and a lot of the players. And so I think it was just a natural progression. I'm glad they went that route. And I think also you've already seen some of the players been able to attract, especially none bigger than Sammy Whitcomb, be able to come back. It's, I think the Lynx are looking pretty good and in a pretty good position. There's probably some worries when the Wildcats kind of relinquished their right to the Lynx and it went back to BWA. But I like the fact that they're going out and still getting those top tier players. And my understanding is the WNBL, they won't have imports this next year. So to be able to get a Sammy Whitcomb, who's probably the best player when you can have imports, almost makes her double the player that she can be. So I'm sure they're building the team around her, and I think hopefully we can continue to build on some of the things that the WNBL has done over the past season, and I think it'll be a great sign for the coaches here in WA as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Now, let's keep moving here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustling and head to our chat with 4 times NBL championship winner of the New Zealand Breakers, Melbourne United big man, current NBL free agent Alex Pledger. Let's get right to it. Okay, back here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustling. One of my favourite NBL players now has been happy enough to join us. He's had a tremendous career. If you have a look at it, almost 300 games now in the NBL, 4-time championship winner at the New Zealand Breakers, and he's still playing an important role where he is now at Melbourne United. He continues to be a mainstay of the New Zealand Tall Blacks team. I assume he's proud of his NBL and basketball career overall, so it's going to be fascinating to go through all of that with him here. And of course, my co-host Shawn Redhage has a pretty long history with him as well, so we can touch on that at some point as well. But that's enough from me. Alex, thanks for joining us, and how do we find you during this strange time in the world?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's just whenever you look at your phone or turn on the TV, there's always seems to be some sort of depressing news about something on it. But yeah, just overall, I feel pretty fortunate that I've been able to kind of get through it relatively unscathed, and just considering all that's going on, feeling pretty fortunate.
Well, it's been 3.5, almost 4 months since 3.5 months now since your NBL season finished at Melbourne United. You've stayed in Melbourne in that time since. What has life been like since it's been so heavily interrupted by everything going on thanks to COVID-19?
It's obviously, we've kind of been following obviously I'm a New Zealander, so kind of been following the like what they were doing over there in terms of the kind of like the level of the restrictions and everything that were put in place, where over there were a little bit tighter, and there was a month where they basically weren't allowed to leave the house. So that we kind of just, I guess, just for absolute safety, just kind of followed that and only left the house when we need to. Made fitness wise, I've been doing what I can and the hallway with a resistance band and a foam roller. You can only do so much when you have pretty limited equipment. So the first couple of days when all this kind of, well, not when it's probably going to be a while before it completely goes away, but when we're allowed, some restrictions are lifted and we're allowed to start doing training again. The first few days will be interesting on the body, but yeah, it'll. But yeah, we just kind of tried to stay as safe as possible, and only venture out if it was absolutely necessary.
When it first all happened, and I guess you had a really brief window to try to get home to New Zealand, were you always going to stay in Melbourne, or did you consider getting back home and then I guess being stuck at home for I guess you just didn't know how long you would have been stuck there for? Did you consider heading back home?
I thought about it, but I'd sign play in the Big V during the off season, just locally here in Melbourne, and at the time when kind of heavier restrictions were in place, it hadn't been officially cancelled. So, at that time, nobody knew how quickly it was, whether it was going to get worse or whether it was going to improve quickly, because nobody knew anything. So, there were kind of questions about whether you go over there or you'd be able to come back, and kind of nobody knew how long, it was all going to last for, and I still don't think anyone does really. So, we just decided to stay put, and just until there's a little bit more clarity with the whole situation and what you can and can't do around the world. So I thought about it, but I think ultimately staying put was a pretty good decision.
Yeah, and you obviously still signed for Melbourne United for next season, so that was a big part of your decision to stay in Melbourne too.
I'm off contract this upcoming season.
Oh, you're off contract. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there goes that question. I was going to ask the whole pay cut situation, but obviously if you didn't have a contract, it didn't affect you. Have you started discussions with Melbourne United? I guess you'll wait and see if they come to you with an offer. But is your hope to come back to Melbourne United and play for Dino for another season?
Obviously, I'd love that, but I think everybody that's a free agent at the moment kind of just understands that, just unsure of what the kind of, I guess, climate would be the word in terms of, sponsorship and whether there's going to be crowds or not and all that kind of stuff. I think, before, and that's probably the reason why free agency has been pushed back a couple of times, that, they don't want to rush into any decisions. They kind of want to, and that isn't just Melbourne United. I think that's every team.
No.
They want to just get a good idea of, what things are going to be like before they, start offering stuff to people. So I'll just do what I can to stay in good condition until then, and just be patient and just see what happens.
Either way, I guess at this point you're just hoping that you've got at least another season left in the league. Is that the way you go? Do you just wait and see sort of what pops up, and if you get more than one offer, you consider it? But as long as you get one offer, you'll be happy to make a move if it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be just like most people. I think we'll kind of just be, happy, just depending on the situation and all of that kind of stuff. You've got to, there's a few things to consider when it comes to all that. But I wouldn't be again kind of playing anywhere really.
Yeah, I've had a couple of really good discussions with Mika Vukona about that time when he left the New Zealand Breakers and how tough it was, but at the same time, I guess the way he was being talked about in the role he was offered, he felt like he was left in no choice. But, from the outside, I don't think anyone expected to ever see Mika play for any other club except the Breakers for the rest of his career, and I think you were in that same boat. I think all of us expected to see you play for the Breakers for your whole career. Probably Jay Illy was the same. When you reflect back now, how tough was it to leave the Breakers? And I don't think it was your decision to leave, but how tough was it to break ties with the Breakers and end up playing for another club and have to leave your home country?
It was obviously pretty tough when you've gone through, 4 championships and, kind of everything that I've been through there. But I guess at the same time, a fresh group or a new group of owners came in, and they kind of had what their vision and their direction and what they wanted to do. So so I guess it was the people. That old saying that basketball is a business. That I guess that was my kind of, after 9 or 10 years of however long I was there for, was kind of my first experience of of that kind of quote being a reality. But I'm pretty grateful that obviously I'd played for Dean at the Breakers for three years when he was the head coach, and he was the assistant for the first 3 or 4 that I was there, and played under him in the New Zealand domestic competition as well for a couple of years. So I felt pretty fortunate that when that happened, he kind of threw me a lifeline, and I've loved the 2 years that I've been here so far.
I guess once you get into a basketball club, there's probably not a lot of massive differences, but I'm sure from living to Auckland to living in Melbourne is a big difference. What have you noticed? What's the major differences you've noticed between living not only from city to city, but you've had to change country to country?
Yeah, I guess it's just, like you said, it's not too different. There are kind of, I guess, little things about how, in terms of just off the court, how things operate, but honestly, it didn't feel too different. Like, I knew a few guys on the team already, and obviously, as I just mentioned, I'd played for Dean for a long time. So, I guess a lot of it felt more familiar than it did different. If I went to, just one of the other teams where I'd never met, or not met, but never really spoken with that coach before, never played with any of those players, it would have been a little bit different. But I guess I'm a little bit lucky that several of the coaches in the NBL at the moment are former Breakers coaches, and I just happened to play for one of them again. So it was a little bit different, but honestly, it kind of felt it was a pretty easy kind of transition. Just outside of a few things. Obviously, Australia again being an English-speaking country, and basically, you can fly to New Zealand quicker than you can fly to Perth from here. So it's it wasn't. So it didn't really feel too different at all. New Zealand and Australia are pretty similar in the way they go about things. So it wasn't a huge shock to the system at all.
Now, Alex, this has been an interesting time, and you're still living in Melbourne, where you're still under some restrictions. Now, how have you been able to pass your time? Because it's been a long time now where you've been under some sort of restrictions. So I'm sure you haven't been able to get out on a basketball court, and I'm sure you're still not allowed to get out of your house a lot unless it's for something something necessary. How are you passing your time with yourself and I think it's your fiance at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, at the very start of it, when kind of restrictions were at their strictest, we kind of weren't doing a whole lot of anything. And then with the situation that we're in with, I contemplated going back to New Zealand and playing in the kind of little revamped competition that they've put together for this season. But back then nobody knew if it was going to get considerably worse or it was going to pass quite quickly. And I didn't want to go back over there. Then if things got a lot worse, kind of not be able to come back over. So there were kind of a few things that I had to kind of weigh up. And I ultimately decided to stay here. But I've been making use of the limited gym equipment I've got in the hallway of the apartment building. When teams are allowed to start signing people, and whatever ends up happening there, the first week or so back at training is going to be interesting.
Have you touched the basketball at all?
I've gone down to there's a couple of just like parks and schools and stuff that are around the area. So I have taken a ball down there to one of those and got a few shots up every so often. Sure. But it gets, especially this time of year, it gets dark quite early and it's cold and it's cold and windy and a lot of air balls have been blamed on the wind. So I've been trying to trying to do what I can, but it's been.
You probably can't dunk on those rings either, can you?
Huh?
You probably can't dunk on those rings either, can you?
You definitely can't hang on them.
No.
Yeah, I'd hate to be that guy that ruins the basketball hoop for a bunch of school kids.
Could the great positive out of this period for you ultimately be that it's a great chance to freshen up your body? Pretty much, well, for the last 10 years, you've gone pretty much playing 12 months of the year all round. When you play NBL, you take in Tall Blacks commitments and you go back to playing in the New Zealand NBL. This is probably the longest period you've ever had without playing basketball. It's obviously not ideal and you didn't choose it, but could it end up having some positives?
Yeah, I think so. Like you just said, it's basically the first non-injury related kind of off-season or kind of real time off I've had ever. So so it has been. Yeah, I've been trying to do as much as I can to stay in decent shape, but yeah, it has at the same time it has been nice to kind of just relax a little bit and just not stress about basketball so much, kind of just let the body rest and let things heal up a little bit and let things recover, and yeah, it has, from that point of view, it has been pretty nice. I had a pretty rough season last season with ankle surgery and then back issues kind of over the second half of the season, so getting having a little bit of time to kind of let those things just sort themselves out a little bit, it has been pretty nice, even though the circumstances around why it's happened obviously haven't been great.
No. We talked earlier about how much pride you've got in those 4 championships that you've won with the Breakers, but are you equally as proud of everything that you achieved while playing for the Tall Blacks? How big of a part of your life is it, and how big of a deal is it for you to always make yourself available to play for your country?
Yeah, it's always been big honour to represent New Zealand. I've been a part of some pretty special moments throughout the years. Probably even though it was kind of early in my international career, beating Australia. Sorry to bring that up. And
no, it's fine.
The 2009 World Cup qualifying series. I think up until earlier this year when the Tall Blacks beat the Boomers in Brisbane a few months back. That was, I think it was only the second, maybe third time that the Tall Blacks had ever beaten Australia in a series.
I think so.
And we were at the time, it was around that time where obviously we still had Kirk Penny and Mika and guys like that, but all the Pero Cameron and Phil Jones and Paul Hanari and all of those guys, it had kind of the guys from that era kind of moving on, and the new guys are coming in, so we're a pretty young and inexperienced team, and to get up against that Boomers team in that series will always be one of the greatest memories I've had for the Tall Blacks.
It's always been fascinating to me to talk to guys like Mika and Kirk, and even Corey Webster's pretty outspoken about it, and Tommy, about how far basketball has come in New Zealand over the last 10 or 12 years. You have a look at the success the Breakers have had, you have a look at the things that you do at the Tall Blacks, and the participation levels back in New Zealand are now, I think it's almost surpassed netball and rugby as the highest participation sport in the country. But yet for some reason, it's a frustration for everybody involved in New Zealand basketball that the funding just doesn't seem to be coming your way compared to other sports. Do you feel like that's you're constantly hitting your head against a brick wall back home because the support isn't sort of matching the amount of success that you're having as a country on the basketball court?
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. When it comes to like the high performance funding for like Olympic campaigns and World Cup campaigns and stuff like that. My understanding of how they divvy up the money that they have is based on the likelihood of winning a medal at the Olympics or the World Cup and stuff like that, and as unpatriotic as this may sound, for the Tall Blacks, that are very well, I don't think New Zealand or Australia have ever done that at a World Cup or an Olympics.
Australia still hasn't won a medal, no.
Yeah, so it's based on that criteria. I guess I can kind of understand it, but the question kind of needs to be the criteria has to change a little bit, because
absolutely.
With all due respect to every Olympic athlete in New Zealand, I haven't seen too many kids growing up wanting to be an archer or something.
Exactly.
Those smaller kind of sports that get a lot of funding because they have a couple of people that compete well at the Olympics. So
exactly. Whereas someone like Stephen Adams would be now getting close to a Dan Carter type of level, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he's probably the most and like what you mentioned earlier about the Breakers and the Tall Blacks, he's also been a pretty major reason for why basketball has increased in popularity as well. And it's kind of it seems around the same time every year they do what they do, and then every basketball player in the country voices their displeasure on social media somewhere. It's kind of just have it saved from the same date every year almost. But I mean, we've I'm not sure what else we can do really. We've we've formed well consistently on the world stage. We're one of the unfortunately that streak ended this year, but at last year's World Cup. But we were one of the I think we were one of 4 or 5 countries in the whole world that had got to the second round of the World Cup since 2002.
Yeah, and you were in the group of death, and you almost got out of it. You almost did make it.
Yeah, so we formed pretty well, consistently pretty well on the world stage, and I guess everything that can possibly said has been said. I think we just have to hope one of these days they change their mind.
I think it's come up again more recently when the NBL didn't receive any funding for this upcoming season that they've been able to get up and going. Now that it is up and going, have you been able to catch any of it, and what have you made of it?
They have a kind of like league pass type thing that is available worldwide. That lets you watch every game live.
Yeah.
If you don't live in New Zealand or don't have Sky TV in New Zealand, and I watched a couple of games the other night, and it's a great competition, especially with the restrictions around crowds and stuff being lifted in New Zealand just a couple of days before it started. So it's good to hear a bit of noise in there when you're watching as well. And, the teams, they had a draft, and the way they set it out, it seems that the talent is pretty evenly distributed. And they, quite a few teams have had guys that were kind of just coming out of quarantine and then, playing the next day without any trainings, and some guys have been nursing injuries and stuff like that. So they're a week into it. I think the second week start today, actually. And so it's kind of, it's kind of hard to get a gauge on who the best teams are, since some teams have been missing players or have been playing with guys that haven't practiced and have just come out of sitting in a hotel for 2 weeks. But I think you'll get a pretty good idea of how good of a competition it is over the coming weeks. And I've enjoyed watching it so far.
Yeah, obviously you still need to work out who you'll be playing for, but we've spoken early on the show where I spoke with Shawn. We both certainly would be amazed if you're not in the NBL for this upcoming season, because we still feel like you've got plenty left to give, as you said that you feel like you do earlier. But now that you've got a tentative start date for the season, December the 3rd, do you start to count down for that and try to make sure that you're 100% ready to go for that? Do you start counting down the days for I guess that date?
And I guess in an ideal world it wouldn't be pushed back kind of 2 months later than it normally would be. But I had signed for a team here in Melbourne for the off season, just in one of the domestic competitions, and with the league being pushed back at least, a couple of months, and with that December 3rd kind of tentative date, hopefully if things with COVID don't get considerably worse than kind of where they're heading at the moment, I'll be able to sneak in quite a few games with that team, before the season starts to get some legs and some touch and some feel back, and hopefully that'll put me in a pretty good place.
Now, like I just said, I still feel like you've got plenty left in your career, but already if I had told you 12 years ago when you were coming back to start your NBL career, or your professional career as a development player at the Breakers, if you were to find out that you'd play 300 games professionally, you'd win four championships in an Australian league as a New Zealand team, you would win championships locally, in your national league, and you would be such an important player for your international team, the Tall Blacks. Even though you haven't finished achieving, would you be pretty quick to take that career if you're offered it, 10 or 12 years ago?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I got in a kind of team environment. I think that kind of the thing that you can kind of be best known as. I think there are definitely guys out there that might be better individually or put up better stats or stuff like that. But yeah, at the business end of the season, I usually round up a few spots ahead of them.
I'm not sure anyone would choose 4 MVP awards over 4 championships, would they?
Depends.
I'd be surprised if they did anyway.
I think, but because I think it was in 2011 I won league MVP of the New Zealand NBL, and we lost, and I think we'd won 10 of 11 games heading into the semi-final. The team that we were playing in the semi-final, we'd beaten them on the road, like at their place, by about 25, like 2 or 3 weeks before, set us in the semi-final. And, being called out into the middle of the court to receive an MVP award when you just get knocked out of the semi-final and don't have a chance to win it. I quickly ran out there, took the stupid photo, then ran off the court, it wasn't a great feeling, I've always, ever since then, I've never really thought that individual awards are that important. The feeling of winning a championship is definitely a lot greater than winning something individual.
Mm-hmm. The fact that you won 4 championships and the fact that the Breakers have only won 4 championships in the NBL, and that's not to say it's not a great achievement, but all 4 you've been part of, how proud are you that you've been part of that sort of success, and what does it mean to you to win those titles?
And obviously it's meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to kind of New Zealand basketball in general. Around that time there was a massive spike in popularity, which I think is kind of still growing. New Zealand, basketball, I think is the most popular team sport, played around schools in New Zealand at the moment in terms of like numbers, like the amount of people, kids participating. 10 years ago, when you'd think of New Zealand, most popular New Zealand team sports, rugby would probably be the one that would be at the top of the list. But I think the Breakers, those kind of 5 or 6 years where we were always in the hunt, combined with Stephen Adams making the NBA and having the success he's had. I think it's played a pretty massive role just in the growth of the sport in New Zealand, which is great to see. But I feel pretty proud to me, Tom Abercrombie and Mika Vicona are the 3 guys that were, or the 3 players at least that were on all 4 of those teams. And it's something that I'm always going to look back fondly on. I've got the rings on my little bedside table thing. Every so often I just open them up and have a little look. It's always that's always something that I'm being that first Kiwi club to win a championship in an Australian-based competition. It's always something that I'm going to be proud of. And without sounding too arrogant, always something that I'm going to let people know.
Well, absolutely. So you should. It's impossible to think of that period without thinking of the rivalry you had with the Perth Wildcats as well. And obviously, given my co-host here is Shawn Redhage, Shawn was a big part of that as well. When I mention the name Shawn Redhage, what immediately springs to mind?
Well, I have to swear on that.
That has been the reaction of some people already, trust me.
I think, honestly, off the court, I don't really know him at all. But, Jared Kenny played in Perth for a couple of years, and quite a few years back, a Kiwi guy named, pretty good friends with, named Jeremiah Truman.
I know Jeremiah well, yeah.
Yeah, played for the Wildcats as well. So, based off of what those guys have told me, off the court, he's a pretty good guy. But in terms of on the court, he's one of those guys, kind of like a Mick striker. If he plays for your team, you love him, but if he isn't on your team, you don't like him.
Sure, absolutely.
And I guess that's just, he was obviously, one of the best players throughout the league in, the decade or so that he played. Looking at the career that he had, the old breakers, owners, and coaches back in the day are probably spewing that they let him go as quickly as he did.
Yeah.
But he was obviously a phenomenal player. Someone, when during those breakers, that's a three-peat years. We had Mika Bacona and Dylan Boucher, probably the two best defensive players in the league at that position, and he still gave us fits. So he was. I think he was just one of those guys that one of those players that you just love to hate.
No, you handled that well. And now, this isn't to say that you still couldn't easily have a number of years left in your career, but have you thought about what you might like to do post-basketball? Have you got something in place, or do you have some ideas of what you might like to transition into down the track?
I think I still have a few years left.
For sure, yeah.
When I was in the US, I was studying sports management, and I didn't graduate. As I mentioned, I transferred, between schools. So some things transfer and some things don't, and all of that sort of stuff. So I didn't completely get my degree over there. And it's something that I've been looking into, but just haven't got around to.
Yeah.
After, which sound pretty bad considering that was 11 years ago. But just thinking about it in my head, but there's a few fields that I don't think anyone truly 100% knows what they want to do. Kind of something in that sort of field. Just something I've always had an interest in. Something I'd like to pursue when that time comes.
Now, the fact that you're 7 feet 1 tall, I'm sure that your whole life you've copped comments about being tall. What's the most tiring comment that people make when they see you walk past?
Obviously, the tiring thing isn't actually the comments. The thing that kind of annoys me the most is staring.
I can imagine.
And then you catch someone doing it, and they kind of look away, and seems like they weren't. Or you'll be standing in a line somewhere, kind of just in your own little world, not paying attention, and there's someone behind you, taking a sneaky selfie when you're looking the other way, and stuff like that. So it's that, I honestly much prefer if people do come up and say something rather than just staring.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm 33 now, and I've been this tall since I was 18. So I've kind of, I've kind of heard all of them.
I bet.
I've seen just on social media and stuff like that former NBA players and other tall people, kind of comebacks and things that they say. I've tried a few of them. I'm not ballsy enough to try kind of an infamous Wilt Chamberlain one. It's not really a thing that bothers me anymore.
Okay. Very good. Been a great time to just catch up with you, I guess, without the pressures of anything going on, and just being able to sort of reflect on your journey and talk about what you're up to now and what you're up to in the future and everything. So it's been great for you to be so generous with your time and so open and honest about everything pledged. So I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed watching your whole career, and like I said, there's every indication there's plenty of years left. So let's hope, whether it's at Melbourne or wherever it is, we see you in the league next season and for plenty of years to come. But for now, thanks very much for joining us on the show, and I'm sure Shawn will say hello to you next time he sees you. But thanks for your words about him as well. But thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, guys. Thank you for having me.
Okay, back here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustling. I really enjoyed that chat with Alex Pledger. Just quickly before we move on, Shawn, assuming he does find a home for this upcoming NBL season, is there a club that stands out as an obvious choice for Alex? Is it staying in Melbourne? Is it going back to the Breakers? Or do you see him being a good fit somewhere else?
Oh, well, I think, anyone could use his skill set that he has. There's not many, 7-footers around that have the experience and kind of know how to play their role like he does. So I kind of feel like it'll be the Breakers will have a really good look at him. I think he fits into that team, obviously that being home, and he's had a lot of success there. So I think that would be a likely scenario for him, possibly.
Yeah, so we're waiting to see. And obviously now the free agency date has been pushed back another couple of weeks, so it starts July 15. And we've also got an official start date or a tentative start date for the NBL season on December the 3rd. Does that make sense to you? Does that seem like a good time to be aiming to start?
Yeah, I think they've obviously want the other sporting codes to be finished up. They want to give themselves enough time to make sure they can have everyone in the stadium, fans, hopefully. I think I like the fact that they've kind of come out early and everyone can kind of plan around it. Obviously, we know that things do change in this world quite rapidly at the moment. But at least gives the teams a bit of time to figure things out, and especially bringing in the imports back. International travel, and that's going to be a little bit more trickier than in the past as well. So we'll kind of see how that all plays out. But I think it's the right move. It sounds like a good time to start, and we tend to get a lot of fans the NBL over that kind of Christmas holiday period because people are looking for things to do. So it might not be a bad time to really kick off the season and get everyone excited about basketball again.
Yeah, totally agree. A bit closer to home for you, Shawn. You were planning on playing another state basketball league season with the Perth Lakes Hawks. Obviously, that was cancelled thanks to COVID-19, as all of the state league competitions across the country were. But Basketball WA has announced a replacement tournament, a West Coast Classic, which will run for 10 weeks and then have a weekend of finals with the top 4 teams playing. Will we see you gracing the courts again, or are you going to take a break in 2020?
Yeah, I think at this point I'll take a break. I got a little bit of a niggling knee injury that I kind of got to get sorted. So instead of risking it, I think it's also probably a great time to give some of these younger guys a chance to kind of play in a quality league. And I like the fact that they're actually still going to be able to do something. Most leagues around Australia aren't going ahead, so it gives some guys, and we've heard some interest from NBL players wanting to play in the league as well. So I think it's great for basketball. I think WA probably one of the better places in the world to be right now, and they probably going to get some decent crowds to these games as well. I suspect with not much else on as far as basketball wise.
Yeah, if I was one of the clubs taking part, I would be taking that approach where I would be wanting to give my young players a chance as well. I don't think throwing everything at winning a tournament like this is really going to be beneficial in the long run, so I would be taking that approach too. But can Matt Parsons welcome you to his coaching staff at least for that 2-month period?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm heavily involved with the Hawks and run a lot of stuff. My son plays in their Wobble program and domestic program as well. So you'll see me around, but we'll see what capacity. I haven't really had those discussions with Parsons as well, but it'll I'm sure you'll see me around the club quite a bit.
Now, on a much bigger stage, the NBA has announced that they will be returning. They'd be playing out of Disneyland. They'll be playing with 22 clubs to finish the regular season. I guess whether or not this still goes ahead, given the spate of COVID-19 cases that NBA players and everyone involved is still catching, is still on the rise. So we'll wait to see what actually happens. But they've got a plan in place to play it and to base it out of Disneyland and to finish the season and to have a full finals series. Do you like the plan they've come up with, and do you see it ending up actually happening?
Look, I think they're trying to make the best out of a pretty dire situation currently over in the United States dealing with coronavirus. I don't know. I just, the way things are going over there, I find it hard to believe that they're going to be actually able to complete the season. And I'll throw a scenario. What happens if a couple players do get coronavirus? They're all in the same area.
Exactly.
How does that work? I mean, I haven't heard what the protocols are going to be in that scenario, but I suspect it's going to be pretty tough to complete the season.
I think so too. I just think time-wise, they don't have enough time now with with players now catching it, with cases, in Florida, they're in the area on the rise. I just don't think they're going to have enough time. So maybe the best idea is to now just cancel this season and aim for a restart of the 2021 season. Aim to start that maybe sometime in November and call the quits on this one.
Well, and the other thing is they're talking about November possibly being when that next wave, when you start getting into flu season and the winter season over there. So some very tricky scenarios that these sporting leagues are going to have to deal with. So we could see the NBL kind of being one of the few leagues actually able to have fans and really make some in-ground. So there could be a lot of people wanting to come play in the NBL next season, I think.
I think it makes us lucky to be living where we are right now. I have a look at some of these things happening around the world, and we're in a very good place.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I just wonder, are other sporting codes possibly even going to try and bring their tournaments or games over here, knowing not sure that the Australian government or New Zealand government would welcome that, but I'm sure they would explore that, considering how well these two countries have handled the virus so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, got some exciting news to announce as well, Shawn. Our show here, Basketball Hustle, has been made possible throughout this last NBL season and now during the off-season thanks to Hoops Heaven. And I've got some good news to announce that they have recommitted to continue supporting our show. And not only that, but they've got a brand new store that they've unveiled on Murray Street in the Perth City. Through this COVID-19, it's allowed them to do some remodeling of the store. They've made the store look a lot cleaner. They've now got 3 months worth of new stock in the store as well, which you can go and check out. So there's some incredible sneakers, NBA gear, Nike gear, Jordan gear, Adidas gear. Anything you can imagine that's related to basketball, you can go and purchase that at Hoops Heaven. It's a brand new looking store. The staff there will take great care of you. If you can't make it there in person, you can go to hoopsheaven.com.au, of course, and also use our code word thanks to listening to this show, which is HUSTLE. So a lot of reasons to support Hoops Heaven, and we couldn't be more grateful for their support of us here at Basketball Hustle.
Yeah, it is fantastic support for us. We really enjoyed doing the podcast this year. And, I'll just say another word about Hoops Heaven. They're really entrenched in the basketball community here in WA especially. But, they have shoes that you can't get anywhere else, and if you're a tall guy like myself and you're looking for a size 15 sneakers, they have them. And, the few times where I've ordered them online and haven't been able to get into the store, they've arrived at my doorstep the very next day. So there's lots to like about what they're able to provide, and hopefully our listeners can go out and support them as they support us.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences. There's been some stuff that I've ordered online too that's arrived pretty much straight away. It's been incredible service. The range of products online and in store is incredible. So please make sure you support Hoops Heaven. Now, it's been a big show, Shawn. It's been a pleasure to do a full episode again. Obviously, last time we caught up, we had a really good chat with Tim Conrad, and that was enough for a full episode. But it's been good to chat about basketball with you again. We'll do it again shortly. And we've got some good guests that I want to catch up with in this off-season still. Kevin Lisch is one that's an obvious one. Connor Henry, I'd love to try to chat to with you as well. And Brian Goorjian, I'd love to try to get on the line as well to allow you to reminisce on your past with him. So those are some names to spring to mind that during this off-season I'd like to explore with you. But for now, I'll sign off. I'm Chris Pike. What can the scoring machine leave us with for this show?
Well, you threw out some big names right there, Pikey, and I think it's been fun. We've had some time to kind of catch up with a lot of different players and personalities throughout the NBL. Hopefully we can add some more names there. And you listeners, just keep listening. We'll bring some great interviews and give you some good content, and appreciate you listening to us.